Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation on Shemet. And joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed, New York City, Rabbi Barry J. Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island. We are recording this before Parsha, well before Parshat Korach for reasons that many of us are going to be away. So we are pre-recording this. So if things happen in the week before, we are not going to comment on them. We know, or if the hostages aren't released, this will be in the 630s. We never like to anticipate these numbers, hoping against hope that they're going to be released. But we are thinking of them, of course, always during these difficult days. And we also are recording this prior to the summer season at Camp Ramah. Of course, by the time this gets aired at Camp Ramah in the Berkshires, this will be already the second Shabbat, Parshat Hukkat, the second Shabbat of the summer. So we just want to give a big shout out to all of our friends and campers, fellow staff. The people on staff now must have been little kids when we were there. If not, they're past the generation. They may not even remember Parsha Talk in its infancy or when we were in our heyday, I guess. We're
No,
now
we're in our heyday now. Don't
we're in our
don't
heyday now. I want to,
I just send out love to a certain senior staff
there
member,
you go. Beautiful.
Mikey. I love my Shia Kalmanovsky.
Absolutely. And to Kol Ramah 102.3, 102.3 FM. The best Parsha talk in the Berkshires in Dutchess County is now in session here for Parshat Hukkat. We are talking about Parshat Hukkat. So let's spend some time thinking about the Red Heifer. I want to just describe this briefly. It's a cow. This cow is all rusty colored, probably brownish, completely. And you take this cow, you slaughter it, and you perform all the rituals that are necessary, that are akin to a chatat offering. And you take the ashes, grind them up, and you add them
But
to
it's
the water.
a special chatat offering.
It's a
There,
special
it's the
chatat.
chatat of either offered by the Kohen Mashiach, the high priest, or on behalf of the entire Israelite community, because this chatat is going to be completely burned, including the hide, which
Including
is
the heart.
unusual.
Unusual, mixed with hyssop and scarlet, and put into like a concentrated powder that is mixed with water at phenomenal ratios and becomes a kind of ritual detergent, as it were. That's the technical term. It's a liquid that is used to cleanse people or really not to soap them down, although you could argue that the ash, ash in early soap making was an important element of soap. But this is a detergent that purifies people. And specifically, it is to take people away from the state of contact with the dead and move them to the state of purity, because death in the biblical system and any contact with death renders one impure. So I just want to dwell on this for a moment and get you to ask, or get you to relate to the question of how this would have functioned in antiquity, and maybe is there any kind of relevance to anything that we can relate to today? Jeremy, you want to try?
Wait, just restate that again.
Relevance of well, this let's just talk about the system briefly in the biblical system of purity, impurity that moves its way all the way through biblical era through the temple.
Yeah.
uh, and then I want to talk about this as maybe a model of something, and I have some thoughts about that, but I'm going to let you guys go
Okay,
first.
so the biblical system of purity and impurity, we are accustomed maybe to think, impurity bad, purity good, and and that I think does not generally speak describe the impurity dirty and purity clean. I don't think that that very accurately describes the system that the Bible portrays, because there are plenty of things which make somebody impure, which are unambiguously good, most prominently childbirth. Okay. But what the systems of purity and impurity do, I think, are put order to things that might be chaotic, like your body and its reactions and the fundamental mortality of your body. In Judaism, it knows humanity because we are embodied. It doesn't have a, so to speak, anthropology of a disembodied soul. I mean, you have certain, legends about and beliefs, even beliefs that deserve to be taken seriously about life after death and what happens to the soul and all those things. But the way that Torah generally addresses its human subjects is as an embodied person who is healthy and also sometimes sick and lives and grows, but always inevitably dies. And so the purity stuff is about marking those stages and very often taking something extraordinary, extraordinarily good or bad, and realigning it with just normalcy, your regular old everyday living human body. So the ritual of the red heifer is about when you have come in contact with a corpse or a bone, or even a sword, or any of these things that are death related, or if you were in the interior of an enclosed space and you came in contact with those things, if you touched those things out abroad, or if you were in interior space and those things were in there, then death has touched you, and you have to recalibrate. So what happens is they take this red or brown cow, and it seems likely that it's that the para aduma, the word for red, you hear the dam word, you hear the blood word in there, aduma. It seems like they're imagining that there's a kind of a blood quality to this, and you mix up the ashes of that animal with the other stuff, and you sprinkle it on the person who's had exposure to death on the third day and the seventh day that since that exposure, and you kind of sprinkle it on them, and then they're ready to go on, having been returned to life. Uh, do we make it meaningful today? We certainly don't do this ritual. It hasn't been done in centuries. There's no formal halachic need until there's a temple, although you can imagine some of the temple crowd has been,
Yeah.
working to discover the red cow, or to maybe genetically engineer one or something like that. Um, but what I do think is this, that underlying the spookiness of this ritual, which is comparatively spooky, uh, is like a very fundamental human need of making sense of what it is to live in a mortal body, to what it is to know that you are and do, you're always in the process of sometimes growing, but ultimately and inevitably you're gonna die. And so this ritual tries to, I think, extract a little of that death miasma or the death cooties, and and free you from it.
Yeah, I would just, want to underscore something that you said, which is chaos and order. I mean, you did touch on that theme, and I think the contact with the dead, at any level, which is, encountering a corpse or, being in the presence of death, um, tends to put you into to thrust you into a kind of chaotic emotional place, no matter how accustomed you are, how how many times you've been in the presence of a dead body. And to a certain extent, it may even include dead animals for us. Certainly, we all drive cars, and especially in seasons when animals are active on the roads, and we'll see a dead deer, or dead other animals, dead moose in Newfoundland or other places.
Have you
Maine.
ever seen a moose? Because like mooses are huge,
I've
right?
seen them, and let me tell you something. They are not uh, pleasant.
It's like a building. Like a moose is like a
Yeah,
building.
You do not want to collide with that animal. But we have plenty of here in New Jersey, lots of deer, lots of roadkill. And there's always a sense of kind of fear. Frankly, even if you see a car accident, we've all driven on roads and highways when you see a crash, okay? And of course, our human curiosity, we want to look at it, want to see, and you want, the danger of it. And for a moment, especially if it's a severe crash, um, you have terror and awe and fear. That because we all know that could be me. And that's a terrible, terrible fear. And so the encounter with even that kind of death, shakes you. These things do shake you. And I would say, so we get an emotional state of chaos. And in order to make the transition from chaos to a certain control, we need a kind of ritual. Let me just one more, example of that. I'm thinking about, we're recording this shortly after the ceasefire was declared between Israel and Iran, and the war, in Gaza continues, and so many people, especially in the recent missile attacks, they've encountered death and destruction in ways that they're not used to. The first responders have come to these buildings. One thing to have the rockets from Gaza were and Hezbollah were devastating, but here entire buildings have been kind of just shredded, and
Mm.
the immensity of destruction, and to go house or room for room, literally room to room, apartment to apartment, to see into, and in some cases they've had to encounter the dead. Um, that, no matter how professional you are and how much training you have, I've watched the interviews of these soldiers, young guys, young women, and they're shaken. They're shaken by it as they, because even with all the training, to come up and to see a dead body, killed in these strikes, reminds them of their own mortality. And here I want to turn to you, Barry, in the sense that the ritual has underneath it this sense of mortality here.
So I wonder, listening to you, if in the ancient world death wasn't seen to be contagious, and that's why contact with the dead was so dramatic, because it could mean that you would be next. And so the ritual isolates the person. There's a 3 day purification process and a 7 day purification process before they could be returned to the community. And I think on one hand, it gives the person pause for thought, perhaps a recalibration of the direction of one's life. But also, it's designed, I think, to be seen as a delaying action. That even though we know we're going to die, we don't want it to be that soon.
Yeah,
And so the ritual has a way of making that point for us because we're withdrawn from the community for a certain period of time, and then only then we're allowed to enter it fully alive. Because when we're in this isolation, we're not fully alive because we're not fully part of the community, which
sure.
ultimately is what's going to give us life affirmation.
I
And
want, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, first of all, I think this is really, really fascinating. This discussion about how, you see a corpse, and it just makes me think about the entire realm of Jewish mortuary methods. Um, I, I don't think, well, my grandparents, I suppose, uh, but in the course of the rabbinate, you see dead bodies. Certainly not something. I mean, Christians, I think, are accustomed to open casket funerals. Jews are like, we in the 21st century, are not accustomed to ever seeing a dead body more than a couple of times in your life. Um, and in some ways, I think it's salutary to have to do that. By the way, you were talking about seeing the dead bodies in the car crashes. I'm just thinking about there's a classic country song by Roy Acuff about a wreck on the highway and seeing the crash cars, and he tells this story about that it sounds like it's a drunk driving thing because there's whiskey and glass, whiskey and blood all together mixed with the glass where they lay, and and he's just scarred. And I didn't hear nobody pray, dear brother. I didn't hear nobody pray. And you get the sense that seeing this human tragedy has cut him off from, cut the narrator of that song off from the divine or the ability to pray. And then Springsteen riffed on that song and wrote another song about seeing a fatal car crash, also called Wreck on the Highway. It's a totally different song, but he sees this wreck on the highway and he imagines the state trooper you know, telling the guys, I thought of a girlfriend or a young wife, state trooper knocking in the middle of the night and said, your baby died in a wreck on the highway. And
I just, yeah, I'm in pain
I
for
know, it's just
the
amazing.
people, the
Uh,
people listening to us at camp, and they've already turned away from us, and they're going like, "Why are you talking about this?"
because it's deep. It's
It's deep.
deep. And
Oh my God.
the reality also, whatever it's maybe okay. So it's not for the Shorashim and the
And the
Nitzanim,
knee. Yeah,
but it
yeah.
is for the Machon and Gesher to
Okay.
recognize, I mean, as we speak at camp right now, as we speak of recording this, I know Shaya told me that the Mishlachat did not arrive, and the last year's Gesher kids have been brought back who are not going on seminar, have been brought back for staff. Maybe that's still the case as you're listening to this, or maybe it
Oh,
isn't.
that's the pros door. The pros
We
door.
got it. Yeah, we got an email about it today.
But if whatever, it's one of the things that the difference between we Americans, we North Americans, and our Israeli brothers and sisters, they have a set of experiences. When I was in Israel, right after, it was in the first month since October 7th, and we went to the army base where all the mortuary stuff happens, and the identification and the wreckage that I asked one of the guys, do you feel like a Chevra Kadisha? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said that it's something like it was a struggle to feel like a Chevra Kadisha. Um,
So, do you know what I want to do? And we didn't rehearse this or nothing, but since we've gone morbid here, I want to resurrect this the conversation and talk about water, okay? And I don't want to talk about the episode of Moses and the water and the rebellion with the water and it's a sad story if you're Moses, if you're Aaron, uh, because they Moses hits the rock, the water comes out of the rock, and they for that reason they are not allowed into the land. But when I think about Mayim, I think about I do think about camp to a certain extent, and the Mayim at camp. We have a beautiful agam, beautiful lake. Um, but I wanna find an upbeat theme here. I can't really find much in the parsha because it's there's a lot of dark stuff in the parsha. And normally I'm drawn to more serious.
so why don't we just
I want to
relate
talk.
relate? I was going to say, why don't you just relate the Miriam well
No,
tradition?
not only that, but ushaftem mayim bisason mim maineh Yeshua. Everybody knows that line. What I love to do in teaching is to talk about things that are so familiar to us that we just don't pay attention to it. So, first of all, everybody would recognize ushaftem mayim bisason of a certain age, but I'm guessing that even people today would know what mayim is. Ushaftem mayim bisason. They know the mayim hora.
They know Havdalah.
And ushafta mayim b'sasamim meneish. So, can you give me a word for word translation? I'm going to turn to you, Jeremy. Give me your best poetics on ushafta mayim b'sason mimanei hayeshua.
You will joyfully draw water from the wellspring of salvation.
Yes. Okay. Just saying that is comforting. And of course,
And I do want to throw in there, this is the Parsha of death because Aaron dies and Miriam dies, but Miriam has been by her presence, midrashically, I'm sure our readers know this, our listeners know this. She, by her very presence, has been the life-giving force that kept them going with water. And I think that that's hopefully, Ein Mayim Ela Torah, as the rabbis say. Whenever you see water in the Bible, you should make a poetic association with Torah. And I would like it to be the case that teachers and spiritual leaders and guides, that what do? They help us get in touch with the life-giving water that keeps us moist and strong and full, and we know in life that that's if not in the case of a miraculous well that follows you through the desert, that's kind of a mythic quality. But whenever you are in the presence of somebody as special as Miriam the prophetess, you had access to some water to keep you alive.
I just want to, thinking about the metaphor of wells of salvation, the well of salvation, and the well as a metaphor, and of course, drawing water, ushaftem mayim. Very few people alive today in the developed world go to their wells and draw water. The drawing of water from a well was the one of the primary human experiences for sustenance. It would have been a completely relevant metaphor for everyone that you go, you acquire water from some kind of source. Some people would draw their water from a river or a stream or a lake. Um, but we would have to go to a well when you don't live around your rivers and streams here. Um, Ushaftem mayim besason mimaynei hayeshua, from the wells of salvation. I mean, this
So, I feel like as long as we're riffing on our many happy years at CRB, we should think about our times visiting Stone Church Falls
there
and
you go. So
Bridge and Kent Falls. Those are such wonderful places.
And we should recommend to all of the people, camper staff, to take their trips out to these different places. Everyone goes, of course, knows about Kent Falls. It's a little more visible, but the Stone Church Falls, which is off the road, just a little north of camp on 22, in Dover Plains, I think it is. Just you park your car, you do a little hike. It's a couple of about 20-30 minute hike, and you do see. One of the great wonders of the Ice Age in this outcrop, water streaming from who knows where. Uh, I used to, when the kids were little, I used to say there's someone with a big faucet up there turning it on and off. I actually got Elisheva when she was a kid to believe that, and that was quite cruel of me. Or I think that that every summer they turn on and off the faucet, just as at camp every at the end of the season they pull the plug out of Lake Ellis and they empty it out so that they can clean it like a tub. I got away with that also for many years.
That's to your fourth child. Her big brother and sisters didn't say, "Oh, come on, you don't believe that, do you?"
It's true, no. But this is, we have so many beautiful associations with that space, and just, I mean, let's just talk about this for a second because we happen to be recording on in some very hot weather, and I'm guessing that hot weather will accompany all of us, whether we're in nature or in urban settings throughout the summer, hot and rain. These are they they sustain the deepest emotions in us when we get a good summer rain in the way that we are uh, acclimatized in our culture. um, and so let's go back to the Parsha now and go back to uh, one of your favorite passages. I'm going to turn to you again, Jeremy, about the Song of the Well, and I want to say Az Yashir Yisrael, which is
What's the quotation?
21:17,
21:17.
21:17, and it will be odd to all of us to sing to our wells. Um, but if the well has a special place accompanying the people of Israel as they journey through the desert, it's miraculous. It sustains us. Um, and the well, wells play a certain role in early biblical stories. I'm thinking about Rebecca, Rachel. These are critical moments, and Isaac and the wells, Jacob and
Zipporah.
the wells, Zipporah and the wells. Um, so, you don't have to look very hard to see the motif here, and understand that here we are, the three of us were at the well of Torah also, trying to draw something out of it. Go ahead, Jerry, talk about it.
Beautiful. I mean, because this is a kind of a fragment of ancient mythic poetry, which is like, epic poetry here in the songs that the chieftain sang, and um, but because they had the drought at Miriam's death, and then Moses has to get the water from the rock. It's quite difficult to interpret because back in Exodus, Moses was told to hit the rock, and that was also called Masah Meribah, a place of testing and strife. This is all here in Numbers. It's called that same name. Are these two stories? Are they one story related twice? It's a little hard to tell. It's kind of impossible to tell, I would say. But at least the version given here in our parasha is that Moses has done something bad by whacking the rock. God says, speak to the rock. Moses doesn't do that. He whacks the rock. Um, and that's a kind of a violent thing. And yes, it works, but God's clearly displeased. And just contrast that to the verse that we're now talking about. Umisham be'era, then they went towards the well. Hi ha'be'er asher amar Adonai Moshe, and this is the well about which God said to Moses, Esofet ha'am ve'etna lahem mayim. Gather the people up together so that I can give them water. Az yashir Yisrael et hashira hazot, ali be'er enula. Then Israel sang this song, which of course connotes Az yashir Moshe uvnei Yisrael et hashira hazot. It sounds just like Exodus 15, that when they crossed the Red Sea, Moses and the people sang this song, or perhaps they would as a habitual act sing this song. Uh, Ali Be'er Enula, come up, O well, spring up, O well, sing to it. The difference between getting water by whacking with a stick and a kind of violence and getting water by singing poetically, joyfully, musically, it just jumps out at me so much that you can sometimes you can get what you need by a joyful,
Oh,
beautiful, aesthetic act.
beautiful, beautiful. The we are moving with this water through the desert. The water has been the preoccupation, I guess, of Israel from the beginning of the Exodus. They're always complaining that they don't have enough water. We take water for granted. We just go to the tap, and there it is, for us in our highly developed societies. There are plenty of places in the world where you can't take water for granted. Think of certain areas of the third world, where they don't call it the third world anymore, the global south,
Developing world.
the undeveloped,
Developing world.
where
Yeah.
simply a micro well will make a huge difference. Of
And by the
course,
way, in addition to not having water, like any places in India or whatever you might have to walk, or Saharan area of Africa, in jungle areas, the water is just not safe. The microbes and the all kinds of bad diseases and stuff like that, the purification that is necessary to be able to use the water. Can you imagine how difficult that would be if you were in sub-Saharan African, desperately poor country, and there was very clean looking water there, but you just can't
okay.
drink it because it will ravage your, bodily system.
Wow, yeah. I know that in the technology sector, Israel is so advanced in both desalination and also all sorts of water technology, irrigation technologies. And there's also a technology that an Israeli company is pioneering in terms. it's a condenser that they have this machine that if you take it into a space where there's no water, it will find the moisture in the air, condense the water, and you'll get the condensed water. It takes an enormous amount of energy to do that, but the energy is worth your survival. We Mayim Chayim for all of us. We look to Mayim for Chayim. So going back to death and life, water does give us life. Ushafta Mayim b'sasamim manei Yeshua. Well, salvation is life also, and Torah gives us life. Torah is a Be'er Mayim Chayim, and that's where we're at here, coming to the conclusion of our Parsha talk here, Parshat Hukkat, this 5785, wishing our friends and former campers who are now staff and well beyond a wonderful Shabbat. Thank you, Mitch Mernick, for putting this up on the airwaves and also in the camp system. And the Kol Ramah station, 102.3 FM, for hosting us. And for everyone here, I want to say Shabbat Shalom. And
Shabbat shalom.
you all a beautiful, beautiful Shabbat, and we'll see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Bye bye.